What if Hollywood's biggest stars planned one final performance? After they died, one legend was buried dressed as Dracula. Another turned his gravestone into a joke. One movie icon vanished into the ocean forever, while another was denied his final wish for a heartbreaking reason. These aren't movie plots. They really happened. And some of these final requests were stranger, darker, and more unbelievable than anything Hollywood ever put on screen. Number 1. Harry Houdini. Harry Houdini built his legend by escaping the impossible. Handcuffs, prison cells, locked trunks, even water-filled torture chambers, nothing could hold him. Crowds packed theaters just to watch him cheat danger one more time. Every performance felt like a gamble between life and death, and somehow Houdini always found a way out. To the world, he was fearless, the man who could escape anything. But there was one thing Houdini could never escape: losing his mother. When Cecilia Houdini passed away, while he was performing overseas, the grief shattered him. Friends said she was the most important person in his life. For years afterward, he carried her letters everywhere, reading them again and again. The world's greatest escape artist could break free from chains, but he couldn't break free from heartbreak. In 1926, Houdini died at age 52, ending a career built on impossible escapes. Yet even in death, he left behind one final twist. He was buried inside a bronze casket that had once been used in his own buried alive escape act. And beneath his head wasn't a silk pillow or luxury fabric. It was a stack of letters written by his mother. It's a touching and slightly ironic ending, the man who spent a lifetime escaping. Everything chose to spend eternity resting on the words of the one person he never wanted to leave behind. For Harry Houdini, love turned out to be the only chain he never wanted to break. Number 2. Bela Lugosi. Imagine visiting a cemetery and coming face to face with Count Dracula. It sounds like something straight out of a horror movie, but for Bela Lugosi, fiction and reality became almost impossible to separate. After his unforgettable performance in Dracula made him one of Hollywood's biggest stars, Lugosi spent the rest of his life living in the shadow of the vampire who made him famous. Audiences loved him, feared him, and eventually came to see him as Dracula himself rather than the actor behind the cape. By the time Lugosi passed away in 1956, his career had long faded from its peak, but his connection to Dracula remained stronger than ever. During his funeral, family members made a stunning decision that shocked fans and reporters alike. Instead of dressing him in ordinary burial clothes, they placed him in a full Dracula costume, complete with the black cape and signature ring. Mourners didn't see a retired Hollywood actor lying in the coffin. They saw the Prince of Darkness himself resting quietly, as if waiting for one final scene to begin. What makes the story even stranger is that Lugosi never actually requested to be buried this way. The choice was made by his wife and son, who believed the character had become inseparable from the man. More than 70 years later, that decision continues to fascinate people around the world. Deep beneath the California soil rests the actor who gave life to cinema's most famous vampire, and in a twist worthy of Hollywood itself, he remains dressed as Dracula for eternity. That's not just dedication to a role, that's becoming the role forever. Number 3. Ed Wood. Most actors finish a movie before they're buried. Bela Lugosi did it the other way around. In the final months of his life, the legendary Dracula star was still working with his close friend director, Ed Wood. One day, Wood filmed several random scenes of Lugosi wearing his famous vampire cape. There was no script, no story, and no clear plan. Lugosi simply walked through a cemetery, stood outside buildings, and struck dramatic poses. At the time, nobody knew these would become the last images ever filmed of him. Shortly after those scenes were shot, Lugosi passed away. But instead of putting the footage aside, Ed Wood came up with an outrageous idea. He decided to build an entire movie around those few minutes of film. The result became Plan 9 from Outer Space, a movie that would later earn a reputation as one of the strangest films in Hollywood history. There was only one problem: Wood didn't have enough footage of Lugosi to finish the story. So he hired a replacement, his wife's chiropractor, Tom Mason. The problem: Mason looked almost nothing like Lugosi. To hide the difference, he spent most of the movie covering his face with a cape. Spoiler alert, it didn't fool anyone. Yet that's exactly what makes this story unforgettable. While Bela Lugosi was already resting in his grave dressed as Dracula, he somehow appeared in one final movie, wearing that same iconic costume. His last scenes were filmed only days before his death, creating one of the strangest endings in Hollywood history. Most stars leave behind memories, awards, or classic films. Lugosi left behind something far more unusual: a performance that continued after his final curtain call. If that's not Hollywood magic, it's at least Hollywood's weirdest plot twist. Number 4. Mel Blanc. What if the last joke of your life was literally carved in stone for millions of Americans? Mel Blanc wasn't just a voice actor. He was childhood itself. He gave life to Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, Tweety Bird, Sylvester Yosemite Sam, and dozens of other beloved cartoon characters. The funny part: most people heard his voice every single day without ever knowing his face. While Hollywood stars chased cameras and red carpets, Blanc became one of the most famous men nobody could recognize in public. Yet behind the scenes, he was creating an entire universe using nothing but his vocal cords. For more than 60 years, Mel Blanc made audiences laugh. He could switch from Bugs Bunny's cool confidence to Daffy Duck's chaotic insanity in seconds. To animation fans, he wasn't one character, he was practically the whole cast. But time catches everyone, even legends. After years of health problems, Blanc passed away in 1989 at the age of 81. Most celebrities leave behind mansions, awards, or dramatic final statements. Mel Blanc left behind something much more fitting: one last punchline. Before his death, he requested that his gravestone carry 4 simple words that generations of viewers instantly recognized: "That's all, folks." The same line Porky Pig had used to end countless Warner Brothers cartoons. And honestly, if you're going to exit the stage, that's a pretty hard ending to beat. Today, visitors at Hollywood Forever Cemetery still stop and smile when they see those words engraved on his memorial. Some leave carrots for Bugs Bunny. Others leave drawings of the characters he brought to life. Instead of a sad farewell, his grave feels like the final frame of a classic cartoon. The curtain comes down, the screen fades to black, and there it is, one last joke from the man who spent a lifetime making the world laugh. Decades after his passing, Mel Blanc is still getting the last word. And somehow it remains one of the most perfect exits in Hollywood history. That's all, folks. Number 5. Rudolph Valentino. Imagine becoming so famous that nearly a century after your death, strangers still show up at your grave carrying roses. For Rudolph Valentino, that wasn't a movie plot, it became reality. During the 1920s, Valentino was Hollywood's first true heartthrob. Women flooded him with fan letters, packed theaters to see his films, and some reportedly fainted at the mere sight of him. Long before modern celebrities broke the internet, Valentino was causing real-life hysteria. Then, in 1926, tragedy struck. At just 31 years old, the silent film superstar died unexpectedly from complications following surgery. The reaction was unlike anything Hollywood had ever seen. More than 100,000 grieving fans gathered to pay their respects. Crowds pushed through barricades, windows were shattered, and police struggled to control the chaos. You'd think the drama would end there, but Valentino had one final surprise. Because he died so young, he had never arranged a burial place. A friend stepped in and offered him a temporary crypt at Hollywood Memorial Park. The strange part, temporary became permanent, and nearly 100 years later, Valentino is still resting there. But that's not what made his grave legendary. About a year after his death, a mysterious woman dressed entirely in black appeared at his crypt carrying a single red rose. She left the flower and disappeared without saying a word. Then she came back the next year, and the year after that. Before long, people began calling her the Lady in Black. Her identity became one of Hollywood's greatest mysteries, inspiring other women to continue the tradition for decades. To this day, roses still appear at Valentino's resting place. Most movie stars hope to be remembered after they're gone. Valentino somehow turned his grave into a century-long love story. And honestly, if Hollywood had written this ending, critics would probably call it too dramatic to be believable. Number 6. Jean Harlow. Hollywood has seen plenty of love stories. Most end with a breakup, a scandal, or a messy divorce. But Jean Harlow's story ended in a way that was far more heartbreaking. Known as Hollywood's original blonde bombshell, Harlow became one of the biggest stars of the 1930s. With her platinum hair, quick wit, and magnetic screen presence, she seemed destined for decades of fame. Instead, tragedy struck when she suddenly died in 1937 at just 26 years old, shocking both Hollywood and millions of fans around the world. Among those devastated was actor William Powell, the man she was engaged to marry. While the public mourned the loss of a movie star, Powell mourned the woman he planned to spend his life with. He personally paid for her funeral and arranged for her burial at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, making sure she received a resting place worthy of a Hollywood legend. Her crypt was marked with the words, "Our baby," chosen by her mother. But for Powell, saying goodbye was something he never truly managed to do. For decades after her death, stories circulated that Powell regularly sent roses to Harlow's crypt, keeping her memory alive long after the spotlight had moved on. Whether every detail of those stories is true or not, one fact remains undeniable: he never forgot her. When Powell eventually passed away in 1984 at the age of 91, he chose to be buried near Harlow, despite having lived an entirely different life in the years that followed. Nearly half a century separated their deaths, yet somehow their story still feels unfinished. In a town famous for short-lived romances, Jean Harlow and William Powell left behind something much rarer: a love story that lasted longer than fame itself. And honestly, in Hollywood, that might be harder to find than a happy ending. Number 7. W.C. Fields. What if your most famous final wish was something you probably never even said? That's exactly what happened to W.C. Fields. Known for his sharp tongue, grumpy personality, and legendary love of alcohol, Fields built a career by making audiences laugh while acting like he hated almost everyone around him. Children annoyed him. Polite society annoyed him. Holidays annoyed him. And somehow, America couldn't get enough of it. Before becoming one of Hollywood's biggest comedy stars, Fields had a rough childhood and even ran away from home as a boy. He survived by performing juggling acts, eventually turning his talent into a worldwide career. By the time he reached Hollywood, he had perfected the character that made him famous, a sarcastic, hard-drinking troublemaker who always seemed one step away from disaster. Whether he was arguing with strangers or delivering a perfectly timed insult, audiences loved him because he said the things most people only dared to think. When Fields died on Christmas Day in 1946, a strange story quickly began spreading across America. According to the rumor, he had requested that his tombstone read, "On the whole, I'd rather be in Philadelphia." It was the perfect W.C. Fields joke, funny, unexpected, and just rude enough to sound authentic. The only problem, the inscription never appeared on his grave. In fact, there's little evidence Fields ever requested it at all. Yet the story became so popular that millions of people still believe it today. Ironically, the joke became more famous than the truth. While the real gravestone is surprisingly simple, the legend refuses to die. And honestly, that might be the most W.C. Fields ending imaginable. A comedian so funny that even after death, the punchline kept writing itself. Number 8. Hattie McDaniel. Most Hollywood stars dream of leaving a legacy. Hattie McDaniel made history. In 1940, she became the first African-American performer to win an Academy Award for her unforgettable role in Gone with the Wind. At a time when opportunities for black actors were extremely limited, McDaniel fought her way to the top, appearing in hundreds of films and becoming one of Hollywood's most recognizable stars. She had earned her place in movie history many times over. When McDaniel passed away in 1952, she made one simple request. She wanted to be buried at Hollywood Memorial Park, alongside many of the actors and filmmakers she had worked with throughout her career. It wasn't a grand demand or an extravagant wish. She simply wanted to rest among her peers. But despite her achievements, the cemetery refused her request because of segregation policies that were still in place at the time. In a heartbreaking twist, the woman who had broken barriers throughout her life encountered one final barrier after her death. Decades later, Hollywood finally tried to correct that injustice. The cemetery's new owners offered to move her remains and fulfill her original wish, but her family chose to let her rest where she had already been laid to rest. Instead, a memorial was built in her honor inside Hollywood Forever Cemetery. It's a powerful reminder that some of Hollywood's most important stories happened far away from the cameras. Hattie McDaniel didn't ask for fame, glory, or a monument. She asked for a place beside her colleagues. The fact that such a simple wish was denied makes her story one of the most moving and unforgettable on this list. Number 9. Clara Bow. At the height of the Roaring '20s, Clara Bow wasn't just a movie star, she was the movie star. Known as Hollywood's original It Girl, she had everything: beauty, fame, fortune, and a level of celebrity that most modern influencers could only dream about. Fans couldn't get enough of her. Newspapers followed her every move, photographers chased her relentlessly, and Hollywood turned her into one of the most recognizable women on the planet. But behind the glamorous image was a woman growing increasingly exhausted by the spotlight. As the years passed, fame became more of a burden than a blessing. Constant rumors, scandals, and personal struggles took a heavy toll on Bow's mental health. While audiences saw a carefree star living the dream, she was quietly battling anxiety and emotional challenges. Eventually, she walked away from Hollywood and spent much of the rest of her life living in relative privacy. When Clara Bow passed away in 1965, the world that had once obsessed over her barely noticed. The It Girl, who once dominated headlines, slipped away almost silently. But her final resting place turned out to be as unusual as her life. After her cremation, Bow's ashes were initially placed in a niche at Forest Lawn Memorial Park. Years later, however, her sons made a surprising decision. They removed her ashes and scattered them into the Pacific Ocean off the Southern California coast. Just like that, there was no grave to visit, no monument to photograph, and no location for curious fans to gather around. In a strange twist, one of the most photographed women in Hollywood history chose the ultimate privacy. After spending decades being watched by the entire world, Clara Bow finally found a place where nobody could find her. And honestly, after surviving Hollywood in the 1920s, disappearing into the ocean might have been the most peaceful ending of all. Number 10. Douglas Fairbanks. Long before superheroes dominated the box office, Fairbanks was Hollywood's ultimate action hero. He leaped across rooftops, swung swords, climbed castle walls, and charmed audiences with a smile that seemed larger than life. As the star of classics like Robin Hood, The Mark of Zorro, and The Thief of Baghdad, he became one of the biggest celebrities on Earth. But Fairbanks wasn't just a movie star, he helped build Hollywood itself. He co-founded United Artists alongside Charlie Chaplin and Mary Pickford, giving filmmakers more control over their work and helping shape the future of the industry. When Fairbanks died in 1939, at the age of 56, Hollywood lost one of its true pioneers. Yet his final resting place would prove almost as famous as the man himself. Instead of a simple grave, a massive memorial was constructed at Hollywood Forever Cemetery. At its center stands a larger-than-life statue of Fairbanks overlooking a long, reflecting pool. The design is elegant, dramatic, and impossible to ignore. In typical Fairbanks fashion, even his grave seems to say, "If we're doing this, let's do it big." Visitors don't just walk past his resting place, they stop, stare, and take photographs. It feels less like a cemetery and more like the final set of an epic Hollywood production. And honestly, that's exactly what makes it so fitting. Fairbanks spent his life playing heroes, building dreams, and thinking bigger than everyone else. While some stars wanted privacy after death, Fairbanks left behind a monument that still commands attention nearly a century later. At sunset, when the light dances across the reflecting pool and illuminates his statue, the scene looks almost cinematic. It's as if Hollywood's first action hero never really left the spotlight. Because for Douglas Fairbanks, even the final curtain call had to be larger than life. Number 11. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe spent her entire life in the spotlight. As Hollywood's ultimate blonde bombshell, she became one of the most recognizable women in history. But when she died suddenly, in 1962, at just 36 years old, many believed the attention would finally end. They were wrong. In death, Marilyn became even more legendary than she had been in life. Buried at Westwood Memorial Park in Los Angeles, Monroe's resting place soon became the center of one of Hollywood's strangest stories. Over the years, wealthy admirers spent enormous amounts of money to secure burial spaces near her crypt. One fan reportedly even requested to be buried face down above her, so he could face Marilyn forever. Later, Playboy founder Hugh Hefner purchased the crypt beside hers, ensuring that even after death, Marilyn remained surrounded by people fascinated by her beauty and fame. More than 60 years later, visitors still leave flowers, letters, and lipstick kisses at her grave. Thousands continue to make pilgrimages to see the woman who defined an era. It's a strange and somewhat ironic ending. Marilyn spent much of her life searching for privacy and genuine connection, yet became one of the few celebrities who never truly escaped public attention. Most stars fade with time. Marilyn Monroe somehow became immortal. Number 12. Frank Sinatra. Most people are buried with flowers. Frank Sinatra was buried with a survival kit. By the time Sinatra passed away in 1998, he was already a legend. The voice of a generation, the leader of the Rat Pack, and one of the most influential entertainers in American history. He spent decades filling concert halls, starring in movies, and living a life that often seemed larger than reality itself. But when it came time for his final farewell, Sinatra's family included a few unusual items in his coffin that perfectly reflected the man he was. Alongside his body were a pack of Camel cigarettes, a bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey, a lighter, and a roll of dimes. The cigarettes and whiskey were obvious choices for a man famous for enjoying both. But the dimes puzzled many people. According to family members, Sinatra liked carrying change so he could make phone calls whenever he needed. Apparently, they wanted to make sure old Blue Eyes was prepared just in case he needed to place one last call from the other Sid. Even his tombstone carried a final message. Inscribed beneath his name are the words, "The best is yet to come." It was one of his most beloved songs, and a fitting farewell for a man who never did anything halfway. While most people leave behind memories, Sinatra left behind a story that feels perfectly on brand, part sentimental, part mysterious, and just a little bit rebellious. And honestly, if anyone could charm their way into the afterlife and immediately ask where the nearest bar was, it was probably Frank Sinatra. Number 13, Walt Disney. What if one of the most famous men in history was secretly frozen after death, waiting for science to bring him back to life? For decades, millions of people have believed exactly that about Walt Disney. It's one of Hollywood's most persistent legends and one of its strangest. As the visionary behind Mickey Mouse Disneyland and an entertainment empire that changed the world, Disney was known for turning impossible dreams into reality. So when he passed away in 1966, rumors began spreading almost immediately. According to the story, Disney's body had been cryogenically frozen and hidden somewhere beneath Disneyland, waiting for future technology to revive him. The tale became so popular that many people still accept it as fact today. The truth, however, is much less mysterious. Walt Disney was cremated, and his ashes were interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in California. There was no secret laboratory, no underground chamber, and no frozen body beneath a theme park ride. Yet the rumor never disappeared. In a strange way, that may be Disney's most magical creation of all, a story so powerful that it survived for generations without any evidence. Most people leave behind a legacy. Walt Disney left behind a legend that even death couldn't stop. And honestly, if anyone could convince the world he might return one day, it was probably Walt Disney. Number 14. Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee spent his life proving that limits were meant to be broken. With incredible speed, charisma, and martial arts mastery, he became a global icon and changed action movies forever. But in 1973, at just 32 years old, Lee died suddenly under circumstances that shocked the world. The official explanation never stopped the rumors. In fact, his mysterious death sparked countless theories that continue more than 50 years later. Buried at Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle, Bruce Lee's grave quickly became one of the most visited celebrity resting places in the world. Fans travel thousands of miles just to stand beside the man who inspired generations. Unlike most graves, his is rarely empty. Visitors leave flowers, letters, martial arts belts, coins, and handwritten messages thanking him for changing their lives. Some even ask him for guidance, as if the dragon is still teaching from beyond the grave. What makes the story even more remarkable is that Bruce Lee's fame has only grown since his death. New generations continue discovering his movies, philosophy, and legendary work ethic. While many stars are eventually forgotten, Lee became something larger than a movie icon. He became a symbol. In a way, the man who taught people to be water achieved something extraordinary. His body may rest in Seattle, but his influence is everywhere. And judging by the steady stream of visitors at his grave, Bruce Lee still has one of the most loyal fan clubs in history. Some legends fade away. The dragon never did.